Greetings. I recommend that you subscribe to my channel. New videos with incredible stories are coming out every day. The house was warm and cozy, the wood was quietly crackling in the stove, a favorite TV show was on, and a blizzard was howling outside the window. Antonina, an old woman, formerly a local nurse, was snuggling in an old, worn-out chair, watching a movie and stroking her cat, Vasily, curled up in a ball on her lap. Suddenly, there was a frantic knocking at the window, then at the gate. Toshka the dog started barking hoarsely, and then everything was quiet. Who was there in this weather? Maybe she imagined it? She was surprised and reluctantly put on felt boots and a felt coat and went to have a look, at the same time to bring some wood. She hardly made it to the gate. As it was drifting down, she opened the door and could not believe her eyes. In the bitter cold, barely able to stand on her feet, leaning against the fence was a young girl. She wore only a nightgown, barefoot, and a knitted shawl on top. It was obvious that she was also pregnant. Her belly was quite large. Barely moving her lips, the girl whispered, "I beg you, please don't drive me away. Help me, they want to take my child," she muttered, as if in a delirium. There was no time to think about it. Antonina quickly led the young woman into the house and threw a sheepskin coat over her. My goodness, what on earth is going on? Who dared to throw the pregnant woman out into the cold? Wailed Antonina. As a medical attendant, she understood the consequences of such walks in the frosts for a girl in her condition. So she heated some water and began to warm her legs, then rubbed alcohol, wrapped her up, gave her some hot tea with raspberry jam, and put her to bed. She said nothing and did not question her about anything. It will be better in the morning, the pensioner decided. The girl fell asleep instantly, whispering only, "Thank you." All night long there was a commotion in the street. Some people were running, hooting, cars were circling. Nastya woke up to the enchanting smell of fried eggs on lard and fresh pastries. She was terribly hungry, and the baby inside her stirred restlessly. She cautiously climbed out from under the blanket. Beside the bed, carefully laid a prepared baize robe and warm slippers. She suddenly felt so good, as in a distant childhood at her grandmother's in the village, and so did not want to go back to the terrible, cruel reality. An elderly woman was in the kitchen, piling steaming pancakes out of a pile. She looked at the girl and said cautiously, "Well, fugitive, go wash your face and sit down for breakfast. You must be hungry. And then you will tell me who you are and what happened to you, wretched girl." Nastya ate breakfast with great pleasure, sighed, and began her story. "I am an orphan. I grew up in an orphanage. I do not remember my parents. I have never seen them. Till I was 5 years old, my grandmother Varia raised me, loved and pitied me, and then she died, and I found myself in an orphanage. After graduation, I got an apartment and was sent to a teacher's college. I met a very rich guy at a disco. All the girls were hitting on him at the time. They wouldn't leave him alone. And he, Sasha, noticed me and chose me out of all the girls. He was 10 years older than me. He had his own cottage in a nearby village, and his father was some big shot. He looked after me beautifully, gave me flowers, and took me to the movies, so I couldn't resist. I fell in love with him to death. All the girls were jealous of me, such a groom. He looked at me and the ground fell from under my feet. We started living together in that cottage. At first everything was fine, but when I realized I was pregnant, it was like he was replaced. He started hurting me, insulting me. He often got drunk, came home in the morning. Of course I cried and begged him to come to my senses, but it was to no avail. And 2 weeks ago, he went crazy, brought a girl straight home, and in front of me, he was doing it with her. I had never been in so much pain. I started to pack my things. I decided to leave Sasha. But I couldn't do it. He got mad, hit me, and said, "Where are you going? You're not going anywhere. You'll give birth to my child, and then I'll throw you out myself. And you will never see your son." Do you understand? Locked me in my room and wouldn't let me go anywhere. Told the housekeeper to bring me food, that's all. I cried all the time, begged and begged. And then last night my housekeeper, Inga, took pity on me and left the door unlocked. So I was in my clothes and I ran as fast as I could, and then I reached your house. Thank you. And the girl sobbed. How awful. How can that be? What are you going to do now? Antonino was lamenting. Honestly, I do not know. Do not drive me away, please. Sasha will take the child after delivery, and he'll throw me out. I'm nobody. I'm not even his wife, and also an orphan. No one to stand up for him. And then I'll kill myself, by God. And Nastya burst into tears. Well, get those thoughts out of my head. You're thinking of something. My son, Grigory, the local policeman, will be here soon. Tell him everything. Maybe he can help me, said Antonina. Grisha was walking home from the duty and was thinking why life is so unfairly arranged. He had recently separated from Irina, his wife. She did not like the job of a divisional policeman. The pay was low, the work was too much hassle and fuss. His wife demanded that he pay up and go into business, and take him to fancy resorts. She nagged him mercilessly, so they divorced. After that, his ex-wife found a rich man and went abroad with him, and he moved to his mother's house. I decided, forget them, women, they are all so self-serving nowadays. Entering the house, Grisha habitually shouted, "Hello, Mammy," and went into the kitchen. To the delicious aroma, he was terribly hungry. Son, I'd like you to meet. This is our guest, Nastasia. She's in trouble. You should listen to her. Maybe together we can think how to help. Antonina asked, Weren't you the one they were looking for all night? Seriously asked the boy. The girl turned deathly pale. She looked like a frightened little deer, with the same large, tear-filled blue eyes framed by thick lashes, and the luxurious, long, wheat-colored hair, put up somehow in a ponytail, and the pointed belly bulging ridiculously. She was so sweet and defenseless that everything in Grisha's heart turned over and gave him a tingle. Don't give me away, I beg you, whispered the girl. Upon learning what had happened, Grisha was shocked. What a bastard! How could you do such a thing? And most importantly, how to help poor Nastya. He did not know yet, but he was sure that he would not leave her in trouble. His conscience would not allow it. When Grisha looked at Nastya, some unknown warmth poured inside, an absurd, silly smile did not come off his face. Don't cry, Nastasia. Nobody is going to give you to this ghoul. Where are your things and documents? Sasha has everything in the cottage. He took my passport so he wouldn't run away. And the keys to my apartment are there too. But I'm not going there. I'm scared. Tears fell out of the girl's eyes, large as beads. Grisha thought a little, waited a little, and then said, Let's do this. You stay with us for the time being. And I'll go to the city now, buy you clothes and everything you need. And then I'll find out through my channels what kind of goose Sasha is. And I'll try to take all your stuff away from him. All right? It's very dangerous. It's my fault. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. The girl wailed. Cheer up. After all, it's my job to help citizens. Grisha answered firmly. Through his coworkers, he made inquiries and found out that Alexander Malyavin was really a rich man, the son of a well-known businessman in the city. The police had had their sights on him for a long time, but they had not had enough evidence to nail him. There were rumors that his business was built on drugs. At first, Grisha decided to try and have a heart-to-heart talk with Sasha, to call him to conscience, although subconsciously he felt that this would not lead to anything good. As he drove up to the cottage, Grigory knocked. A stout, well-fed young man came out and asked nonchalantly, Who are you, and what do you want here? Not you, but you. I am your district officer, Grigory. I would like to talk to you. The guy started. Come on, but hurry up. I have guests. The young man continued to be rude. I know that you illegally detained Anastasia Kozhevnikova, took her documents and things. Give them back. The girl is frightened and does not want to return to you, Grisha said sternly. The major became angry, clenched his fists, and shouted, There you are, you little bitch. How vivacious. I thought she died in the cold. So you're going to complain? I haven't needed her for ages. I've had enough of her. But I'll take the child away from her anyway. That's it. What's that penniless girl going to give him? And anyway, who asked her to get pregnant? You idiot. It's not legal. You have no right to take a child from his own mother without her consent. Grisha lost his temper at this insolence. I don't give a damn. My daddy's got the whole town locked up. So she gets nothing. Only in exchange for a son. Tell him so. And Sasha rattled the door in front of the divisional officer. Grigory was outraged by the boor's rude behavior and decided to act through his father, since the conversation with his son had failed. The guy spent a month collecting dirt on the business, found a lot of interesting things. He thought for a long time, weighed everything up, and decided to take the risk. He went directly to the businessman's office, pushing aside the indignant secretary. Without hiding, I told the man the whole truth about his son, and in the end I added, And mind you, I have some serious dirt on you. If your son doesn't stop harassing Anastasia and leave her alone, I'll use it. You won't think much. He handed him copies of the papers. Grisha expected that the man, like his son, would begin to be rude and threatening, but he was mistaken. The man quickly looked through the documents and sat back in his chair, thoughtfully put his hands on his head and said, I heard you. I will take action. I don't want any more trouble. And my son is already in my throat, to be honest, with his tricks. All the girl's things and documents will be taken to her address. I'll take care of it. If it's confirmed that the grandson is mine, I'll help. I'm sorry again. The policeman was dumbfounded by what he heard and could only mutter, Thank you for understanding, and left the office. Grisha ran home like a madman. He had enough to please the girl. Entering the house, he saw a touching picture. His mother was teaching Nastya to make pies. She was diligently trying, piecing the edges together. The tip of her nose was in flour. Hair plucked out from under the kerchief and stuck out funny. And again a whole ocean of tenderness poured out inside the boy. Well, Nastasia, rejoice. You're free. Tomorrow you can move into your house. Don't be afraid. I took care of everything, said Grisha. The girl dropped the pie, squealed, and rushed clumsily to embrace the savior. Thank you, Grisha. All my life, I will be grateful to you. I thought that I will not get out, she babbled. Antonina interfered. How to move tomorrow? I'm used to it, Nestenka, and I get on well, and there's a living soul in the house. How can she, an orphan girl, be alone with her child and without work? There is no one to help her. The pensioner wept woefully. And I just wanted to talk about it. Nastya, maybe you should try to find your relatives. Maybe there are brothers, sisters, Grisha suggested. I dreamed of it all my childhood, but I do not know where to start. Dazed girl. Grisha and Nastya actively started to look for her, found an old nurse from the orphanage, found out the address and the name of the girl's grandmother, and slowly, by thread, unraveled the whole tangle. What they found out left absolutely everyone in shock. Antonina and her son and Nastya were sitting at the table, sobbing in unison. Antonina wailed, And I just felt in you a kindred spirit. Here I was looking and thought, where could I see you before? And now I understood. You do look like my sister. I'm going to find a picture. And the woman went through old, yellowed photos. Look, her eyes and her hair. What a Valka. What a bad girl. She'd been dysfunctional since childhood. She didn't want to study. She went out at full throttle. Yes, she got pregnant. Only one returned from the maternity hospital, said the baby died in childbirth. And as it turned out, She threw the child under the door of her fiancé's distant relative, an old granny, and ran away. God punished her. She probably didn't live long. 2 years later, she was drunk and got hit to death by a car. Nastenka, it was fate that brought you home to your own people. Forgive me, girl. I knew nothing about you. The old lady stroked Nastia's hand, and Grisha lowered his head and said quietly, "So, you and I are second cousins. So," and quietly went out into the yard. He literally slid down the fence, felt at his knees, pounded the ground with his fists, sobbed, and thought, "Why? Why? I loved Nastia with all my heart. How can I get her out of there now?" It seemed to the boy that he was pursued by some evil fate, and there was no end to it. Life slowly went on its course. Nastia gave birth to the big boy Semya, and she moved into her apartment. On weekends, they visited their aunt with their son. Antonino was happily taking care of the baby, cradling him, singing songs. But it was as if Grisha had been replaced. He lost weight, hardly ate, became withdrawn and gloomy, began to drink often. The guy was afraid to even look at Nastia. He couldn't help it. Everything inside him was breaking off. The heat was enveloping him. He wanted to hug her, hold her, kiss her. He could not stop loving her, and that was it. And Nastia immediately blushed, lowered her eyes. She understood that it was wrong. They must not love each other, but her heart was aching and longing for her boyfriend. Antonina watched, understood everything. Her heart was bleeding. At night, she would frantically pray, "Lord, give me the strength to tell the truth. I can no longer hide. I'm ruining my children's fate," and wept silently. For years, she had kept a terrible secret. Not a living soul knew about it, and now, how to tell? What will happen? Anxious woman hesitated, but still decided. She could no longer see how Grishanka is suffering. I Zashilsia all. When Nastia came back, Antonina put Samashka to bed on the veranda and told Grisha and Nastia to go inside. She searched the nightstand for a long time, took out a box, and began the story. "Grisha, my dear son, I thought that you will never know. I will take my secret to the grave. But I guess it wasn't my destiny. I can't bear to see you suffering like two doves with beaten wings. My children, love each other. You are not related," and the woman cried softly. Grisha frowned. "Mom, what are you saying? How is it possible?" He mumbled distrustfully. "My husband Ivan died early. I am a widow since 30 years. I have never been able to love anyone else. I worked in a maternity hospital all my life. One day, a Malecho girl gave birth to a baby and left her there. She didn't even look at it. She crawled out the window at night and disappeared. And when I took you in my arms, I felt you, my son, my darling. I never parted with you again. The head of the department helped me with all the paperwork, and I adopted you. Forgive me, my darling, for keeping silent. I was terribly afraid that one day you would find out everything and give me up. I am still afraid." And the pensioner sobbed again. Grisha was dumbfounded, surprised and happy at the same time. He could not believe his ears. Could it be that the Lord had mercy, and he and Nastia could be happy? He fell to his knees, wrapped his arms around his mother, and whispered, "No way, Mommy. Thank you for telling me. I am not offended. You are the dearest to me. You devoted your whole life to me." Nastia was taken aback and could not make a sound. "Is there such a thing? Who would have told? I would never believe it." Grisha, having come to his senses, approached the girl. "Nastia, I fell in love with you from the first moment I saw you. When I found out that we cannot be together, for me life stopped. But now, tell me, will you marry me? I'll be a faithful husband. I'll raise Semyon as my own. I will never reproach you for anything." The boy looked hopefully and anxiously into the bride's eyes. Nastia blushed and said quietly, "I'd agree. She could not have dreamed of a better husband." The horrors of her past life were far behind her, and everything would be fine ahead. Nastya knew that for sure. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, because without a subscription, watching 98% of viewers